It's Tuesday, August 12th, and even though nobody has watched, after reviewing last week's chat, I'm going to say the weather is still weird. We did get the rain today, but nothing compared to what came from Detroit and what they're having in the Baltimore, Washington area. I'm hoping things are going well for my cousins and any of my friends down in that vicinity. The neighbors are down in Ocean City, Maryland, and it looks like it was rainy down there, and there might be a little bit of coastal flooding, but hopefully tomorrow they can get on the boardwalk, etc. I'm looking forward to our trip in about 3 weeks. All right, it's Tuesday, which means I just got done with an hour of Western Swing. And I forgot to put the questions section in. Considering what I went through with bluegrass a few weeks ago, nobody is going to corner me and say, play bluegrass only. I will say that the people that preceded me with my station had 2 streams, and when they dropped the option of the second stream being for lower bandwidth, they did go to an all bluegrass stream, and it went very well. However, back in 2007, most of the streaming bluegrass stations were just developing or not around. Bluegrass Mix came online in 2007, and I think Worldwide Bluegrass came on around the same time. So if you were to start a bluegrass only station on Live 365, you might not have the interest, but you might be able to pick up a lot more interest depending what happens. A lot of people are worried about their royalties. Okay, let me get back to Western Swing. On Tuesday evenings and Wednesday mornings, I program an hour of Western Swing. I should probably refresh it completely every week, but it doesn't quite manage. Good evening to whoever is watching. But as I've said before, I was in the Western Swing before I was in the bluegrass. Also, consider my age. I may not look it, but I'm going to be 56 in a couple weeks. When you get to my age, you want a little substance in your music. Bluegrass has substance, but certainly Western Swing does. And there's a lot of standards in there. And it's amazing the number of people that are reinterpreting them well. I have had the privilege of meeting people in Bob Wills' family. Got to meet his daughter, hang out with his niece at the Steel Guitar Show a couple of times. And I got to say hello to Luke Wills at my first big event back in 1996, the live recording for Asleep at the Wheel. And many times I've visited Texas and the people I've hung out with, Western swing has sure been dominant. I certainly pride myself that I have practically everything from Tom Morello and the Time Warp Top Hands. And I'd like to thank whoever it was from 1996 that steered me towards those records. At the time, he was teaching in California, but he was from Texas, and we lost track of each other about 1999. But Western swing is not on the radio. Except in short bursts. The people that program it are likely older folks who were around when it was a little more active. And the demographics of regular radio certainly do not support grandparents' music. If you want Western swing, you're most likely you might find it on a public radio station. I know it's on a commercial free in Austin, maybe other places in Texas, but then Western swing is the music of Texas. But otherwise, you gotta look for folks like us who are willing to share our appreciation and dig it up. Western swing does have its award shows. This past weekend, the Northwestern Association of Western Swing gave awards to about 15 people, including some dear friends of mine, Carolyn Martin, who has been all over my PSAs this week, Albert Tully, who I met at the steel guitar shows, Billy Bowes, the Queens, whom I have programmed over the years, and of course Floyd Domino, who I have seen in any number of configurations since 1996, and our most intimate conversation was before the benefit from my dear friend Danny Roy Young in 2008. So Tuesday evenings and Wednesday mornings are my time to preserve Western swing. And I'm hoping to make a big impression this year if they have their awards again next year in Texas. Last I looked, the website was down and all that. Okay. If Tuesday nights and Wednesday mornings are Western swing, you move on to another solid date. Tomorrow is the announcement of the 5 finalists for the International Bluegrass Music Association Awards. Also, the announcement of their 2 Hall of Fame people for this year. I have been programming a lot more bluegrass than Western swing. We have our current and our classic hours that run 11 times a week, between them. And I don't think we could have 2 hours of gospel if it weren't for bluegrass. So you would think I'd be better, but after about 4 years of voting, I'm still a little rusty sometimes on who the instrumentalists are. I try to keep up with a few of them, but I'm still at the point where I mostly concentrate on the main artist. So, but in the main artist category, I have big hopes for the people at Mountain Fever, big hopes for the people at Mountain Home, and I know what I like in singles and so forth. Bluegrass is going back to being somewhat single-oriented, and I'm one of the people that follows the trends, and the bluegrass singles are most likely to be on the current Bluegrass Hour. For the regular rotation, I'm more likely to pull an album track. Of course, sometimes I make decisions to stick something on the regular list versus putting it on the regular Bluegrass Hour. But I think this year in particular, bluegrass has been pretty prominent on the regular playlist. And I'm getting a little lax in putting the classics on there, but there's certainly been enough current. And I try to make sure some of that current reflects in the weekly top 20. So I will celebrate tomorrow night. The announcements start at 4:45 Central, which is 5:45 Central. I got a huge meal tonight, so I will sit there with my leftovers and enjoy, and probably appropriately have some strawberries and blueberries afterwards. I was thinking of maybe going down to Tennessee for the announcements, but the airfares were high, and Mother isn't doing as well as she could right now, and I really don't want to leave her for a couple of days. Looking forward to the visit from my older brother, and she can have a little more people to talk to and sit around. Parkinson's and essential tremors are not easy to deal with, and I'm so blessed that we can keep her home. So tomorrow night, I'll be logged into the putting some grass in it board and listing the highlights for anybody that doesn't want to bother to tune in and see what people think. I'm not that much into the gospel song this year. Some years I knew exactly what I want there and so forth. I think my favorite year in that category was 2012. Well, actually 2011-2012, when the Gibson brothers had out Help My Brother with 2 songs on it. Somehow the rules got stretched that the first year the Gibson brothers cover, He Can Be Found, was on there. And the album of the year was listed for album of the year. So I was quite surprised when the one I loved, Singing As We Rise, was nominated in 2012. I've said it before, but I don't know who's watching. The 2012 awards at the Ryman. By the second half of the evening, I was anything but reverent. And it had nothing to do with Del McCoury getting the award. The last few awards of the evening just kept me on my feet. Junior Sisk getting male vocalist. And then they came to the emerging artist, which is a big controversy, but when they announced Joe Mullins and the Radio Ramblers, I think I was just so humbled. I had been tracking them, running into them all over the place while I was there. That day in particular. Things are different now at we're in Raleigh, but when you were in Nashville, if you went to the lunches, hello?
Hey, what's up?
Do I know you? I'm not here for just taking photos.
What? What did you say?
Sorry. I don't know who that is, and I get a little worried. Okay. Thinking again. I want to say it was 2012. Yeah, it was 2012. Um, I must have gone to lunch with Mark Hodges in 2013. But anyway, I walk into the awards lunch in 2012, and it's a dark area. You walk in, you sit down, and they serve you. So I find a table with an empty seat, and I ask if I can sit down. After I've sat down, then I discover I'm at the table with Joe Mullins and crew. Later on that afternoon, I have a quick word with them in the exhibition area. So that night was just a cap to that. Then Junior Sis gets another award for Album of the Year. I just love that album because the year before, when that was released, I had gone up to a hotel room adjacent to the convention center for a showcase and picked it up personally. Finally, they get to Gospel Song of the Night. And the special thing about me is, aside from loving the Gibson Brothers, I am very close with the writer, Joe Newberry. He's from North Carolina. And we had been talking, particularly way back. I knew about that song before the album even came out. And I have been behind it and behind it. I really wanted to meet him that night, and unfortunately I had to wait till this year. But lo and behold, my song won, the song I love won for gospel. So he's up there at the Gibson Brothers. And then the Gibson Brothers come up again to take Entertainer of the Year. I gotta look back at my papers and things and try and get my stories straight, because some of the stuff seems like it was 2011, and yet I know it wasn't. I will say though, I think Doyle Lawson, yeah, Del McCoury was 2011. Doyle Lawson was 2012. And nobody's going to forget Tony Rice's speech for 2013. I will be going back to North Carolina for IBMA this year. I'll be leaving the Monday, be there for the convention stuff Tuesday, Wednesday, and early Thursday, the awards Thursday night. And do I know you?
No.
Why?
That's
Do I know?
okay.
I like human interaction. I like people.
Okay. I'm just here describing my music experiences for a few friends. So,
Yeah. Oh, I see that you're live.
yes. I try to get a few people to come in that usually don't. So,
Yeah. So where are you from?
Central Pennsylvania.
Right on. I live in Alaska.
Oh, I was just up there for my first cruise in June.
Oh, really? That's pretty awesome. Where did
What
you go
part
on a
of
cruise?
Yeah. What part of Alaska?
Anchorage?
Oh, yeah. I stayed at one of the big hotels there my last day after we got off the ship. We were gone from about the 15th to the 22nd. We got on the boat in Vancouver. We did Ketchikan, Genoa, Skagway. I went up to Haines and on to the wildlife sanctuary and back. And we saw Glacier Bay. And we got off the boat in Seward and rode to Anchorage, stayed at the hotel, and then flew back to Seattle. Okay. He left. But in case he happens to read it later, I will say Alaska was amazing. I saw all extremes. We had rain the days we were in Ketchikan and Genoa. We had almost 70 degrees when we went to the wildlife preserve. And other than going to the wildlife thing, I did not venture too far from the ship. There isn't that much to see in Ketchikan if you just walk. However, a couple of our group went and did a zip line tour. We also did some shopping in Genoa. Over the course of those couple of days, I bought back some Christmas tree ornaments, and a pair of Alaska socks. There isn't much in my pictures, but if you see the group pictures from the people that went on the Larry's Country Diner cruise, it's the same thing. When I see the picture of Keith Bilby and Mo Bandy in the tourist store, I think that's the same one I was in when I was in Genoa. I will say, if you ever get a chance to go to Alaska and cruise, do it. The unfortunate thing is, there were some people, when the boat got to Genoa, when the boat got to Seward, that we're staying on, and we're going to go on and try and take a Denali land tour. Unfortunately, the rains flooded some things out, so they got evacuated. But I was there with a group of 12. 9 were from Arizona. 2 were relocated to Florida. I had met most of them on my trips to Arizona before. And with one exception, our cabins were all very close. 3 of us were within like 8 or 9 doors of each other on one side, and 2 others were on the other hall nearby. And yes, summer is about the only time you take cruises to Alaska. I think it'd be interesting to see what's up north. But I don't know if I'd want to particularly do that on a boat. But it has been exciting to share the Alaska experience with others who have gone this year. And I'm sure we'll have more stories when I get to IBMA. So as I said, tomorrow I'll be in the room talking it up for the awards finals announcements. I like the way they handle it now in the evening. Back when I first started following those in 2008, it was a press conference on a Thursday morning. And that particular year, my partner had managed to get an interview with Daly and Vincent on the air interview where we put tracks in. And she got that, I think it was beginning of July. And we went over and we edited it and all that. And I had the idea, why not premiere it the day they announced the finalists for the IBMA Awards? We were premiering that at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can imagine what I must have felt when, at 1:45 Eastern, I'm looking on my laptop and seeing they had taken 8 nominations. I may not know the history of bluegrass as well as some people, but I do understand the aspects of computer communication and internet radio programming. My history through amateur radio and message boards and so forth, and my love of music Makes me a good fit for the automated stuff I run on Live 365. I had speech therapy when I was young. I'm bashful, my timing is off, and I don't think I want to run an hour-long program live like a lot of people do. As it is now, I do bumpers. If you listen to Live 365, you will find it's 3 or 4 songs and then a commercial break. Before the commercial break, or if you're listening premium without the commercials, is a spot. You can get a generic Live 365 or anything up to 20 seconds. So I fill those 20-second spots with things of interest. The top of my top 20 for the week, recent birthdays, recent obituaries, and awards. That's the joy of running something like that. And may I say, it has been 19 years since I first got online. Well, technically 23, if you consider that I ran an AppLink board for amateur radio. That wasn't person to person, that was signal to signal. But it was August 2nd, 1995, when my neighbor came over. We put the disc in, and he figured out how to get me on the phone online. All those high bills to AOL and ways to try and get free service and tying up the phone. The internet's come a long way, and some of it's not necessarily for the best. People were talking about everything that's happening with the Messenger app on Facebook. Folks, the things they are talking about have to be. You cannot make video calls. You cannot add photos, etc., without accessing the camera or the microphone on your cell phone. Yes, there are apps, game apps, and so forth that take your picture from files. But from what I'm reading, they cannot take over your phone to the point where they record your conversations or take pictures of you without your knowledge. My phone is an Android. I get along just fine. And I'm not going to drop it, because there are times when I'm home, I'm as likely to be on my phone as on my permanent machines. And when I'm out and I want to message somebody, I don't want to be confined by that. Just look at what I'm doing here tonight. I had a couple people come in and look. Okay. Now, so here for another 10 minutes or so. This t-shirt I have on goes back to 1999. Actually, the end of 1998. No, wait a minute. Early 1998. Cornell's album, Cool and Unusual Punishment, came out in 1996. I found a copy at the Tower Records that I walked to from my hotel when I was in Las Vegas. I looked through there thinking if there's anything I wanted, and for some reason I had gone backwards through the CDs, and when I went forward again, I happened to come upon the label for Cornell and found it and grabbed it. Made nice conversation that night when I saw Chris O'Connell. Cornell was one of the reasons I wanted to start going to Austin. It was the first show I saw when I went down in 1997 in October. When this album came out in December, the drummer for Asleep at the Wheel had his own CD distribution system at the time. And he said, Cornell's album just came in. Do you want it? I said yes. It arrived Christmas Eve. What I didn't know was it was Cornell's birthday. I was alerted by one of the friends who turned me on to him in the first place. So I wrote back and said I got it. The second trip I took to Austin at the end of February was because the first time I didn't get to meet Dale Watson. When it's also the first time I stayed on the south side of town. I looked at the map and tried to stay somewhere that was in walking distance to the Texarkana Grill. So that Thursday morning, I walk up, take the first of many hikes down the hill way down Old Torf, walk past the Texarkana Grill. It's about 11 o'clock. So I wander down to the drugstore to pick up a few things. And it so happens that what I had with me was a DVD of 40 Acre Feud. I knew Cornell ate lunch there. I didn't realize Thursday was the particularly designated day. So I'm walking back, and I get to the parking lot just as he's getting out of the car. He remembers me well. We walk in, and he says, "Danny, look who's here." So that's the first of my many Thursday lunch chats. So sad how things have changed about Austin. Danny's sudden passing in 2008, right before my 50th birthday party. By that time, the Texacowie had closed. And shortly thereafter, Cornell left Helvetas and took about a year and a half before he got established where he is now, at Schultz Garden. And I regret I have not seen any of the shows yet at Schultz Garden because every time I'm in Austin, the weather's bad. One year in February, 2 years in January, and one in October. Schultz Garden is not an indoor venue, so you take your chances. I'm going to correct that a little bit because the one year he was not at Schultz Garden, first year in January. And I can remember that because I had other plans for that night that I would not have been able to keep if he had that show, although it was a little cold that evening anyway. Austin weather gets crazy. I have seen 80 degrees in January, and they have actually had more snow in the past few years than in a long time. This past year was terrible. Snow, ice, places I've never seen so much of it before. I feel bad for kids that only got 10 or 11 weeks of summer instead of 13. And it sounds like this year is not going to be much better. I love summer weather, and I regret that I've not been able to sit out more in it because the evenings are cool or wet. I went swimming last week down at the local state park, and I was lucky to find an 80-degree day at 2 p.m. to enjoy it. Because we haven't had any since. Well, we might have briefly, but the nights are cold or the nights are wet. Where I am tonight, it is wet. However, if you go south to Washington and Baltimore, they're having flooding. And I said, I'm a little concerned about my cousins and some friends down there. I like my summers not excessive hot, but I can take a few more days of 85 to 90 degrees and 75-degree evenings. I think that's why I enjoy going to Phoenix in March. I hope things are that I can continue to travel and enjoy my musical friends. And all the things happening in the world won't change that. But I'm a little pessimistic. On that note, it's midnight. So, from 4 miles from the center of Pennsylvania, good night.